Welcome to the You Are a Philanthropist podcast. Today we're talking with Natalie Silverstein. Natalie is an author, speaker, award-winning podcast host, nonprofit founder, and passionate advocate for family and youth service.
You are the kind of person who wants to improve the lives of others, but you need to take pride in your everyday actions. You Are a Philanthropist believes that every act of goodwill deserves to be recognized as philanthropy. Each individual action you take impacts another's life. Believe that what you do makes a difference. So call yourself a philanthropist and start a ripple effect of generosity that boomerangs back to you. Go to youareaphilanthropist.com/shop. Style your outside to match your inside. Choose a t-shirt, hoodie, or bag to show how much you love giving to others. That's youareaphilanthropist.com/shop.
Hey y'all, I just want to remind you that I need you to subscribe, rate, and review to this podcast. If you're enjoying it and want more conversations like this and want to help people get more involved with philanthropy, please subscribe, rate, and review. I want to thank you to the people who have already rated this podcast 5 stars. Please click to rate it 5 stars. And here is some awesome reviews. I love hearing the different stories from a variety of people's personalities. We all can contribute with the strengths we have in making the world a better place for all of us to live in. Here's another one. I really enjoy this podcast. It's encouraging to see that I don't have to be a multimillionaire who created a philanthropic foundation to impact people. It's my small gifts of my time and resources that add up. I am a philanthropist. And here's another. There are opportunities all around at an early age to remind us to look out for each other. It's a lifelong journey of seeing the opportunities and acting in them. Thanks for a great reminder. Listeners, please do me a favor, subscribe, rate, and review right now so more people can hear more from us and learn more about philanthropy.
Welcome to the You Are a Philanthropist podcast with Jen Klein, a certified fundraising executive and philanthropic entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you to make a difference in your community and our world. Jen believes all acts of kindness matter, and this show is designed to help you take pride in your everyday actions of improving the lives of others and making a change in the world. Now, here's Jen.
Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am fangirling so much because I just love the work that you're doing. There's some synergy between, your work and my work. And
Absolutely.
I would love for you to share with my listeners how you got started in philanthropy. There's so many questions I have, but let's start from the beginning.
Sure, yeah. So my background is in healthcare, health policy and administration. I have a master's in public health. And so I worked in the healthcare field for many years, hospitals, managed care companies, that sort of thing. And then I had my children, one after the other in fairly short order. And after the third child was born, they are now 23, 20 and 16. After my third child was born, I kind of needed to take a pause with working outside of the home. And in the course of raising these kids, I wanted to go out into our community and volunteer with them. I sort of understood instinctively, as I think most parents do, that volunteering, being of service, helping others, opening our eyes to the needs of others is kind of one of the only ways to raise grateful, grounded, compassionate, empathetic people, which is our goal here. So I would go out into our community. We live in New York City on the Upper West Side, a community of 8 million people. And I was sort of shocked to find that a lot of nonprofits didn't want us. For good reason. My kids were, let's call it, 9, 7, and 5 or something. I think that a lot of nonprofits don't know what to do with children and young adults and teens in their environments. And so I kind of, pushed back on that a lot. At that point, I partnered with an organization called Doing Good Together, which I highly recommend to your listeners. It is a national nonprofit based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they provide resources for families to raise kind and compassionate kids. Like that's just all they do. And they were putting together a listing of family-friendly volunteer opportunities in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And I thought it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted to do in New York City. But they didn't have, any branches anywhere across the country. And I reached out to them and they were so thrilled. And they just saw this as an opportunity to kind of expand their messaging around the country. So I started doing that for them in New York City about a decade ago. So I curate this listing of family-friendly volunteer opportunities. And I just became that person in my community. I became the sort of Rolodex of service and volunteerism and places to donate. And I loved it. And it really became a calling for me. And that turned into my first book, which was Simple Acts, A Busy Family's Guide to Giving Back, which was for families with youngish children. And as soon as that one came out in 2019, I had people suggesting that we needed a similar book for teenagers. And that teen book came out in 2022, Simple Acts, The Busy Teen's Guide to Making a Difference. And that book really has a little bit more about philanthropy in it, in terms of social entrepreneurship, fundraising, all of those things that I think teens are particularly good at, and they are consumers, so they have a lot of power in their choices that they make in terms of the things that they're buying. And so as much as I want my work to focus on hands-on service and volunteerism, philanthropy sort of became a part of that messaging through the teen book, and my podcast grew out of that book as well. Personally, I've just been really fortunate. Have gotten involved in a lot of collective giving circles, which I'd love to chat with you about. I think those are really very powerful. Some female-based ones, some ones that are, for everyone. I find collective giving to be just an incredible way for everyone to participate in philanthropy. It democratizes philanthropy. So it doesn't really matter how much you have. If you have $1, if you have $1 million, you can be a part of the decision-making on how those dollars are spent in terms of helping nonprofits in your community. And my husband and I founded a nonprofit. So, we really we believe so thoroughly that if we have something to share, whatever that is, if that's financial resources, if it's talents, if it's skills, if it's time, that it's our responsibility to share those things with others. And so that's just been my journey over the last 10 years, I'd say. And it's really one of the things that I love talking to families and parents and young people about.
You're incredible. I love that. There's no limits with you. You just go for it. You saw this need within your own home and the values you wanted to instill in your children and brought that to the community in New York City. And you've written a book, founded a nonprofit, are a part of giving circles. It's so exciting what you've done.
Yeah. I feel like this is kind of what we're put on this planet to do, right? Obviously, I come from a position of privilege in terms of my ability to give back, but I would also argue, and as you well know, the folks who have less actually give more as a percentage of their incomes. And so there is this true belief that I have that every single person has something to give. And that should be celebrated, no matter what it is. Talents and gifts and skills and time and perhaps financial resources, if that's within a person's ability to do. But every single person who gives something to someone else is going to get back so much in return, right? That whole helper's high idea, this idea that when you help other people, you feel good. It's an endorphin rush, and it just makes you feel like your life has some meaning and some purpose. This is what helps me to get out of bed in the morning. And I would argue that we have this tremendous mental health crisis right now. And one way for us to maybe all feel a little bit better is to look outside of ourselves and our own circumstances and see who we might be able to help. And there's tons and tons of research around this. I know you know this, but that is truly a fact, a biological and psychological fact that if you help others, you actually gain so much in return, in terms of your own mood, your own sense of confidence, positive attitude, just a sense of purpose. Volunteers live longer. It's just the bottom line. So you kind of can't argue with the facts. And I think anecdotally, we all know that when you're able to help another person, whether or not that person even expresses thanks or gratitude to you in return, you feel really, really good. And so I believe that that's a gift that we can give to our young people as well.
Yes, and that's why I titled my book Giving is Selfish. And it's a
Exactly.
play on words. I mean, it isn't really selfish because it's doing so much good. And it's kind of a, interesting thought that it's not giving is selfless. It is giving is feels good, is selfish. And I love that because it sparks a conversation with people. And something that you said is democratizing philanthropy. And that's something another thing we're going to touch on in a future episode is that everybody can come to the table.
Right.
It's not just for wealthy individuals who can give millions of dollars. It's for everybody, like you said.
Right.
And that's exciting because together we can do so much more.
Right.
I focus on adults, and I'm so thankful that you focus on family and teens. And your podcast is a way to excite teenagers about what they're doing and excite them about the next generation. Can you talk about your podcast?
Sure, I'd love to. So it's called Simple Acts, Big Impact, Celebrating Teen Changemakers. And it grew out of the book that I wrote for teens because I was meeting and reading about and hearing from so many incredible teens who have started social impact endeavors, nonprofits in their own communities. They've started fundraisers. They care passionately about the environment. There are so many people have such a kind of a negative narrative about this generation of young people that they're self-involved, that they're staring at their phones, that they don't care about others. I actually totally disagree. I think that this is a really passionate and kind-hearted and engaged, generation of tweens and teens and young people. I think that they don't get hung up on a lot of things that older generations do. They are incredibly connected. They can spread a message like nobody's business in 5 minutes, right? They can get to the heart of an issue. They call people out on things, right? And I think that they do truly care about our planet and our world and our government and what's being left for them in the future. And so I just wanted to highlight and amplify and celebrate some of these stories. And this is my second season. I'm just wrapping up my second season. And every single week, I come away from these very short conversations. They're about 12 to 15 minutes each with I'm so inspired and I'm so hopeful. So honestly, if this podcast doesn't change anything for anybody except for me to make me feel like, wow, we really have something to look forward to. These kids are going to fix it for us because we've kind of messed it all up. Kids get out there and they see an injustice. And they don't sort of wait around for someone else to fix it. They actually come up with a way to fix it themselves. And I'm just, I'm inspired by that. And I think we need them. We need to give them the skills and the tools. We need to mentor them in this way to teach them how it is that they can put these things together. But the truth is, some of these grassroots efforts, I mean, honestly, they make more impact than these huge NGOs and these huge nonprofits that kind of get in their own way a little bit administratively, right? A lot of red tape and a lot of people running around spending a lot of money and not actually impacting the folks who need the help the most. And these teens are just doing just incredible things. I mean, the stories every week just delight me. And especially the thing that gets me the most is the spark in their eyes, them telling me the story of how this journey started for them, perhaps when they were 7 or 8 years old, perhaps when they saw a person who was experiencing homelessness on the street, or they themselves were not well and they were in the hospital, or whatever the spark of that was, that then turned into this passion and this purpose. And that's really what my book is all about. So I love it. I love amplifying their stories. We say that, they're our future and they're the hope and all. That's all really true, but they're here right now doing the thing, making a difference for all of us and for themselves. I think anything that we can do to engage young people in this work is so, so important.
That's beautiful. I love that you're inspired by your guests as well. And I know I feel the same way when I interview people like you. And I just call all my guests philanthropists,
Right.
because to me, they are, whether it be random acts of kindness or volunteering in their local community, doing the work that you're doing. I'm curious, this is not an easy question, but out of all the various things you do for others, what is the favorite thing that you enjoy?
Wow, that is a good question. I would say right now, the thing that is really filling my cup quite a bit is I am facilitating a community service club at a school on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which is, kind of a tough neighborhood. But it is a school, kids come from all over the city to this school. It is a middle school for gifted boys of color. It is an independent school, but they typically don't pay very much. They pay whatever their family can afford. And so the school itself is run as a nonprofit. So they do some fundraising and they have grants that pay for the tuition for each boy. So it's sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And these young men come from public schools typically, where they were lost a little bit. They were not engaged as much as they needed to be. They were perhaps in these talented and gifted programs, which sadly aren't really serving our kids particularly well. And so they are gifted and they are smart and they want to do more and they want to achieve a lot more than what was being offered to them in their local public schools. And so they come from all over to this wonderful school on the Lower East Side. They get a world-class education. They wear ties every day. And they shake the headmaster's hand as they walk in and as they walk out. And they are just an incredible group of young men. So this is my third year facilitating the Community Service Club because I truly believe that, again, they are the recipients of philanthropy, right? They're the recipients of donations that are made to run the school and to allow them all to get this incredible education and then go on to wonderful high schools and then on to college. 100% attrition rate to high school and like 99% to college and beyond. So they are the recipients of philanthropy. And yet I wanted them to know that they themselves are philanthropists. I wanted them to know that they have gifts and skills and something that they can offer to their communities. And so we have done food drives, pasta drives for the local soup kitchen. We've made sandwiches for the local refrigerator. There are community fridges here in New York City where people can just come and take food. We did a book drive for this enormous, wonderful annual book drive called Project Cicero that provides books for literally millions of public school teachers in the city of New York. I mean, they get so excited about this work. And I ask them, what do they care about? What are the issues that they care about? What should we pursue? What should we look at? And they come up with incredible answers every year. And we come up with new projects and new opportunities to volunteer together. And I want them to know that everyone has a responsibility to volunteer in the community. Everyone has the ability to share their gifts. Everyone has something that they can offer, and they do too, even though they're only sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, and even though they come from perhaps difficult homes and situations, and they are coming to this school and receiving the benefit of philanthropic donations, and yet they themselves can also give back. So that to me feels like a perfect example of the way that I can spread this message a little bit. And I just love the boys. They're so great and fun and funny and engaging. And it fills my cup. I go to see them every Thursday, and it's kind of the best day of the week for me.
That's beautiful. I'm just loving how you say it fills your cup, because it shows how beneficial it is with the helper's high in giving yourself. And I also love that out of all the areas that you could have highlighted, whether it be writing your book or founding a nonprofit or being involved with the Giving Circle, it really is boots on the ground,
Right.
going downtown, a service opportunity.
Right. And listen, it's a schlep, right? It's not easy. I know this sounds insane for people who don't live in New York City, but I live on the Upper West Side, and this is on the Lower East Side. So as you can imagine, there's like no easy way to get there. So every Thursday afternoon, it's like a lot of travel, and if it's pouring rain and all the things. But at the end of it, when I come home, I'm just so glad that I was there, and I was so glad I was with the boys and for the conversations that we had, and the things that they shared with me, and that I was able to share with them, and what I'm exposing them to in a variety of different ways and the different types of work that we do. And what's funny about this is my work with the George Jackson Academy, that's the name of it, started because I learned about them through one of my giving circles, which is Impact 100 NYC, which is a women's giving circle, which was the concept was founded more than 20 years ago. There are branches all over the country and all over the world. I was a founding member here in New York City in 2020 during the pandemic. But the George Jackson Academy was one of the first grant proposals that I read that had been submitted for a $100,000 grant. They were one of the finalists. They didn't win. And I learned about them through that process, through reading the grant and doing an interview for the site visit. And I just fell in love with the concept. And I thought, wow, this is a private school, if you will, that is changing the lives of these boys and doing a better job of educating them, certainly, than a very, very large public school system. And look at the impact that it's making on these boys' lives, and then their families, and then their communities, and the ripple effects of giving a young man an education like this, and where that will take him and mentoring him. I was just so impressed by it. And I reached out after the grant cycle was over, and I said, I really want to get involved. I want to become a part of this community. And what can I offer you? I can facilitate a community service club. And they said, yeah, come on down. So again, these things sort of beget themselves, right? My work with the Giving Circle introduced me to this nonprofit that I never would have heard about, ever. Why would I ever have heard of this, right? And now it is such an important part of my day-to-day life. So that's, I think, another big picture issue here for your listeners is I personally believe that volunteerism, and by extension philanthropy, opens your eyes to the lived experiences of other people in your community and throughout the world, people that you would never have had another opportunity to interact with in your day-to-day job, in your family life, or whatever it is. That philanthropy and service give you that opportunity to learn from and to meet and interact with and connect with and engage with. It is so expansive, what it can do for your mind and for your perspective, and to understand how other people live and experience the world. Now look at all of this stuff that's just happened from me learning about that nonprofit and lots of other ones. So, again, it is a gift that you give yourself by volunteering in the community, and certainly it is a gift that you give to your children, because we all need to open our minds. This is where understanding comes from. We're in such a divisive time right now. I think that if we could all serve together, hand in hand, to learn from each other, from our neighbors, like, wow, what that would do in terms of unity and cooperation and civility, all of the things that I hope we're striving for.
I'm getting goosebumps on multiple aspects of what you're talking about. Just to go back a little bit, will you explain to the listeners about what a giving circle is? And
Yeah.
it's another way to democratize philanthropy.
Yes, absolutely. So I started being involved with a different one even several years ago, which was also for women. But Impact 100 is just an excellent example, and it's a super simple concept that I think everybody can grasp onto. So ideally it's 100 women give $1,000, so we give away a $100,000 grant. Period. This year we happen to have more than 300 women, which means that we will give away 3 $100,000 grants, which is really a lot. There is a chapter of Impact 100 in Florida, I believe it's in the Palm Beach area, that has over 1,000 members. And so they give away $1 million a year to community nonprofits. So the goal here is to give away these grants to a nonprofit in our local community that is doing, as you said, boots on the ground, doing transformative, and that's the key word, transformative work to change the lives of people in our community. And so I just love it because it, again, exposes me to all these organizations that are doing incredible things. I love the power of collective giving. I love the fact that my dollar is not going to do much. Your dollar alone is not going to do much, but our dollars together might actually move the needle incrementally, even the tiniest bit, for a person, an organization, a cause. And so, I love this quote. Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So again, I think there is just tremendous power in collective giving. And this doesn't have to be on this big sort of huge scale. You see this a lot in GoFundMe, right? You see this a lot with different fundraising campaigns that people try to do in a grassroots way. But in this way with grant making, it really, and the democratization piece is that every single woman has a vote. So every participant in Impact has the opportunity to, if they choose to read the grant proposals. If they don't have the time to do that, they leave it to others to do, who then recommend which organizations we should fund. And it's one woman, one vote. So everyone has a say in where our money goes. So you feel really good about that. And, I just think the ability to look at these grant proposals, to really think about them, to ask really good questions, to listen to the other women who have opinions about whether or not we should fund this organization and why. It's just an incredible process. I will say that on a smaller scale, we have a next gen group for teens, which is part of Impact 100. My daughter is a part of it. And it's the same concept, but it's $100. So each teen can either donate or raise for themselves with a car wash or whatever, $100. And then they all come together. And the goal is, again, however many there are, if there are 75 of them, they give away, $7,500, and they love that experience because, again, they get to look at organizations and vet those organizations, really understand how is the money going to be used? Is it going to be transformational for the people who are receiving it? Is it an organization that doesn't waste a lot of our money? You need to look when you're a philanthropist and you're looking to donate your money, you should look at the financials. You should look at whether they're a part of Charity Navigator, whether they, how do they spend your money? Are they good stewards for your money? What percentage of each dollar actually goes to the work or to the recipients versus to the administrative overhead or to the salaries of the people, right? And so these are such great skills that everyone should have when they're evaluating where they're going to donate their money. And so we have this next gen group for the teens, which I think is really special. So I'm a member of several groups like this, and I do love reviewing the grants. I know people who like to be a member of the group just to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and they can afford the donation, and they trust that the folks who are making the decisions are picking the right nonprofits. But again, one woman, one vote. And I think that that's really super powerful.
I love that. And it's one of my goals to be part of a giving circle.
And you can start one. I mean, that's the beauty. And you can decide how much the entry, everyone should give the same amount. So everyone feels like they're invested in it. And so for Impact, it's $1,000. But, again, it could be $100. It could be $10. But if you have enough people who want to come to the table, again, the power of it is how can we get more people at the table? How can we get more people involved? And then look how it grows, right? I'm such a firm believer in this. And I just think there is this hopelessness that I feel like happens when you look at the problems of the world, and how can you not every single day when you turn on the television or the news or the radio? But if you just throw up your hands and say, well, there's nothing that I can do. I can't possibly move the needle. I can't possibly help. That's where the hopelessness comes in and the negativity. But if you think to yourself, well, I have this to give, talents, gifts, skills, or I have just some small amount of money. And what if I combine forces with others, with friends, with other families? What could we do collectively together? I mean, that's just, there it is. That's community building. That's civic engagement. That's, neighbor helping neighbor. We can't do anything in a vacuum. We can't do it alone. And we also can't give up. And so, and perfect is the enemy of the good, right? We're not going to solve all of the world's problems, but we can make incremental change, and we can change the life of maybe just one person. And isn't that enough?
Yes. My favorite quote is when Mother Teresa said, if you can't feed 100
Mhm.
people, then feed just one.
Exactly. Because that one person then can maybe take care of their family. So the ripple effect, again, the smallest stone cast into the water, right, makes a ripple. The tiniest pebble. It
Yeah.
makes the same kind of ripple that a big stone would make. So instead of throwing up our hands and saying, ugh, there's nothing I can do. What am I going to do? Yes, there is something you can do. And you can get more people to join you.
Absolutely. I'm curious what your greatest source of inspiration is. Maybe it was an event or someone in your life that sparked this passion within you.
It's funny. I've been asked how this got started for me. If my family was particularly philanthropic or what. And the truth is that I was raised by immigrants to this country. They came from Ukraine, which is a whole other podcast, right? After World War II, and so they worked really hard, and they didn't have a lot of money to give philanthropically. They certainly supported their church and families that were perhaps coming over from Ukraine. They supported Ukrainian charities. But it wasn't a big part of our family because it was just the nature of how much my parents had to work to keep a roof over our heads, et cetera. But there is just something about, every single experience that I can remember from childhood of volunteering or of my mom. She was a big fan of St. Jude, the Children's Hospital, and they would send a solicitation and like a little envelope, and she would literally write a check for like $5 and put it in the envelope. Or the Jerry Lewis telethon. I'm aging myself now, but I would call on the phone, literal on the telephone, and there would people on the television picking up the telephone and marking down how much you were donating. And then I would give my mom my pennies and she would send them a check. It's funny that those things stick with me in my memory. And again, I wonder if it's because I had this really good feeling, like, wow, I just did something nice for another person. It's always kind of moved me. And obviously my career choice to want to work in healthcare was I just wanted to do something to help other people. And I thought I could work professionally in a capacity, not as a clinician, but in an administrative way that is kind of keeping it running, helping other people. So, I don't know if there's one particular incident that is my greatest inspiration. I will say that I have had some experiences over my time as a parent, which is still ongoing and never ends apparently, that have inspired me to know that this is the right path, right? Like something that my kids did, even in like the quietest moment where I saw that, like, all of this stuff that I'm trying to role model for them, all of these things, these examples of philanthropy and service that I've been trying to insert into their lives in proactive ways and even more subtle ways, something is sinking in, So I'm thinking about a time I was on the subway with my son. And if anyone's ever been to New York City, the New York City subway is tough going sometimes. And there was a gentleman who was walking up and down the car asking for help if anyone had any money or food that they could give to him. And, we typically, we like to support organizations in the city that are helping those who are experiencing homelessness and poverty, because that's probably, we hope that they can help to get to the root causes of those issues. But in that moment, when you're confronted with a human being, and my son was perhaps, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, and it was wintertime, and he had a little parka on that had a little zipper pocket on the front, those ones that I don't know what you're supposed to put in there, a phone or something. And he just quietly unzipped it, and it had like a nickel or a quarter or something in there. And he gave it to the man, and I said, "Where did you get that?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. I got it somewhere, picked it up off the street or something." And it kind of occurred to me, like, instead of looking down and ignoring this person, like he thought, well, I have something in my pocket. I'll just give it to him because he didn't need it. And I don't know, that just felt really good. So it's little things like that, I think, throughout the course of my life that inspire me that this is important work.
Beautiful. I am curious if you could share with our listeners what is the best way to get started if they have an idea about something they want to change or they are feeling disheartened in some way? What's the best next step for them?
Yeah. I always say like, just get started, right? The great phrase that I like to use, or the great Arthur Ashe, he said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, right? And so I think bigger picture, this getting started or trying to make some change, trying to make some difference is about sort of making the choice that you're going to make the time to do this, right? Or that you're going to budget, to save the money or to have the money available to make a donation if that's the route that you're trying to make. But just you have to say yes to service, and that might mean saying no to something else because we prioritize so many other things in our lives, right? And so I think first of all, having a passion for something, knowing the issues that you care about, what are my talents, gifts, and skills that I can share, that I can bring to bear to this problem? Who are the organizations? What are the organizations in my community that are making a difference in this area of interest? And then how do I marry those two things, right? So this is an activity that I have at the start of my book, which is really almost like an assessment, a self-assessment. So sit down with your kids, sit down with your family, have your teens do this for themselves. Like, these are my gifts and talents and skills. These are the things that I can share. These are the things I enjoy doing, because it's so important. If you don't enjoy the work, you're not going to want to stick with it. And certainly teens aren't. And then these are the issues that I really care about, that really tug at my heart, that anger me, that make me curious, that make me worried for my future. And now, how can I look at the first list and the second list, and how can I marry those two things? And then it might take a little bit of research and a little bit of time to find the perfect fit. Every effort is worthwhile. And if you go out and you try a service project, or you try volunteering for an organization, it doesn't feel like the right fit, I would say don't give up. And that's certainly true with kids and teens. Get some feedback, personal feedback from your family. Try something else. Be curious about what it was that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy about that particular volunteering opportunity. But all of these things have to be sort of intentional, right? We have to want to do this work and to set aside the time and to put it on our calendars and to look out and sign up for the volunteer activity, the time slot, and go to the orientation. It doesn't just sort of magically happen. I like to say there are no random acts of kindness, right? They are intentional acts of kindness that we are doing mindfully, and that as we walk through our days, we are thinking to ourselves, how can I can be a little kinder here in this instance. I can hold the door for the person behind me instead of letting it smash in their face, right? So I think that the best first steps for yourself are to say, okay, this is something that I want to make a change. This is something I want to get involved in. How can I do that? How can I best share my talents and gifts and skills? And then, I really believe that you have to make a choice sometimes, and you have to prioritize this. But again, back to my original first statements, this is going to come back to you over and over and over again in terms of how great it makes you feel, how happy you will be that you spent your time and your resources doing this. And I think it changes your life for the better. So, and I think we know this from the research. So it's really just being intentional about it, and then just sticking to it, and that's certainly the key with kids and teens, obviously.
I love your reminder that random acts of kindness, you must be intentional about it.
Right. Right. It doesn't just happen, right? Like, you have to go out into the world. And especially as I talk to families about this, like, you are teaching your child every single day as you walk through the world, the way that you greet other people, the way you look them in the eye, the way you speak to them and about them behind their backs. Kids are listening and they're watching. You are role modeling for them your values. You are living your values, and service and philanthropy are the way that you role model these values for your children. Because at the end of the day, what are we talking about here, right? Philanthropy is about helping others and building equity and building fairness into our society for future generations. Service is about the same thing, right? And it's not about the haves and the have-nots and about me kind of coming in and saving everybody. No, we're all in a position to help right now because we're lucky enough to have the time or the resources to do that, because someday, for sure, we are going to be in need of help ourselves. And that's how I just approach it with my kids. Like, we're doing this today for other people because someday someone's going to do for us. And that's how this goes, right? And so this is what building sort of civic engagement for kids and future generations is all about. But I just think there isn't anything more important than this, especially right now, especially in this very kind of difficult and dark and negative and spiteful and nasty discourse. My first book really kind of grew out of this, like, let's try and all just be a little kinder and speak a little more kindly to each other. And I think that really makes an impact. So as you walk through your day, your child is watching how you're speaking to others. And P.S., you feel better about yourself at the end of the day if you've had positive interactions with others versus negative ones.
Oh, I got the goosebumps again. It's just an important reminder for all of us about the role modeling we're doing, whether or not we have children of our own or, other people in general.
Because don't you feel like if you're in a store and you see someone having a positive, pleasant interaction with the person taking the money behind the counter, like when you step up, you're gonna, if they were yelling at each other, then when you step up, you're not going to be feeling like being friendly. Like, goodness and kindness begets itself, right? It spreads. It actually spreads. And I would argue that it's that spreads even more rapidly than negativity. So just always be a little kinder than necessary. Lead with kindness.
I love that. I know what your mission is about, which is about spreading this joy of service within families and youth. But I'm curious, what is your vision for a better world?
Wow. Well, my vision for a better world would be a place where people actually listened to others and where everyone felt seen and heard and understood for their concerns and their issues. I think radical acceptance and compassion and empathy for others, such that perhaps the way a person is living their life is not how you would choose to do that, but it is within their rights to live the way, as long as it's not hurting you or others. And that requires tremendous compassion and empathy and open-heartedness, kindness, just that people would be a little more kind. I don't know why our national discourse is so angry and negative and unkind. I think we are missing a level of civility in discourse. And so my vision would be that everybody would kind of take a step back and, not to use this sort of old adage, but like, treat others as you would want to be treated, right? So if you're speaking to someone in a way that you wouldn't want to be spoken to yourself, then why are you doing it, right? So that would be my vision, because then all good things would stem from that, right? So if we could all greet each other with radical empathy and compassion and kindness, then we would automatically want to serve our community and help others, help our neighbor, right? And then our neighbors would want to help us. And then we would be on pleasant terms. We don't have to be friends with everybody, right? We don't all have to be like kumbaya, but we can all be civil and kind and understanding of each other's struggles. This notion that everyone is dealing with difficult things, we just don't know what they are because they're none of our business. And so just approach everyone with the understanding that they might be having a bad day, just like you might be having a bad day. So then everything else would kind of flow from that. People would serve, people would give generously, philanthropically. We would understand that we're all sort of responsible for each other. I think that, a change in the discourse would actually just sort of open up all of the other good things that could come and make us, stronger and happier and it would just be a kinder, gentler world. That's what I would like to see.
Beautiful. I just want to remind our listeners that one of the ways we can make a kinder, gentler world is to share this podcast episode.
That's right.
Tell the world about your podcast, Simple Acts, Big Impact. This messaging is so important for people to hear that it's exciting to give. Look at the next generation of what they're doing. These, like you said, are not voices that are amplified. And I just love the synergy between us both wanting to amplify those voices.
Right. I mean, listening to this podcast at the start of your day, isn't that such a nicer way to start your day, right? With some really nice things to think about and ways that you might walk through your world differently today after listening to this conversation versus listening to people screaming at each other on the television or podcast or radio or whatever. So I don't know. I am naturally interested in and attracted to positive messages and positive people on social media. I don't follow any negative, snarky things on social media because I don't need any more negativity or snarkiness in my life. And I encourage young people to do that as well. And so, yeah, I would say share all of these podcasts, all of yours and all of mine, because wow, what a much better way to start your day. Just put yourself in a much more positive headspace.
Yeah. I just loved our conversation today, and I am going to go back to it and be inspired, not just one time, multiple times.
So much, Jen. Thank you. I'm so glad we found each other.
Me too. And remind my listeners how they can find you.
Absolutely. So my website is simpleactsguide.com, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and all the things at Simple Acts Guide. And the podcast is on all of the platforms. It's Simple Acts, Big Impact, Celebrating Teen Changemakers.
Wonderful. And I'll have all that information in the show notes. Is there any parting wisdom you have for my listeners?
I would say just be a little kinder than necessary today. How about that?
Beautiful. Just start with where you are with what you've got right now.
That's it. Thanks so much, Jen.
Thanks, Natalie.